initials, so why don't we begin? I'll call the Tuesday, September 8th, Town of Essex Select Board meeting to order. Are there any agenda additions or changes, Evan?
Yeah. Hi, everybody.
Go ahead, Sarah.
There is. I can put it up on the screen. So we just had one addition to the reading file tonight, an email from Mary Beth Redmond about H944. That's been added to packets.
Thank you, Sarah. So that is the email that all of the select board members received last week from Representative Redmond with an update. And other than that, there's no other documents being added. Is there anything from the board members that you would like to add to amend the agenda, or anything you'd like to take off the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Vince. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Pat. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to item 4, public to be heard. This is the part of the agenda when the public in the audience can talk to the select board about questions and comments that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone from the audience who'd like to speak to the board? They can raise their hand using their toolbar, or they can make a comment in the chat that they'd like to speak. I'll let it go for another few seconds to see if anyone wants to speak. Irene Renner, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just curious where the update on racial justice work in Essex came from. I believe it's down there in the reading file. Maybe it's consent. I can't see that part of the screen. There we go. 7E. It doesn't have anybody's name on top. So I was just wondering where that came from.
This is a copy of the Front Porch Forum post that was placed throughout the community earlier this past week. I believe it was written by Greg Duggan.
Thank you.
Okay. Now that we have that taken care of, let's move on to the first. Oh, my apologies, my Teams is not working. There we go. First business item, 5A. Discussion and potential action on policy on raising of flags and painting of murals on Town of Essex, Village of Essex Junction property. Evan, would you like to start the process, or Pat, you have your hand up?
I do. It's not really a conflict, but I think it's worth mentioning. I was part of the group that created the new revised guidelines that EWSD put into place this July. I was not on the school board at that time, but I was part of the community group that created these new ones. So just so that everyone's aware, since we are looking at those as part of our potential decision-making process tonight, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew I was involved in that.
Thanks, Pat. I certainly wouldn't consider that a conflict, rather an example of some additional experience that you can bring to the conversation. But thank you for making us aware of it.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it was best just to get it out on the table.
Always better to be safe. Evan, you want to bring us up to date on where you are?
Sure. So as you can read by the memo, we have had requests already to either fly statement flags, or paint murals on our street, very similar to what Montpelier has seen, Burlington, Bennington, and several other communities. We, as a staff, felt it would be important to have a unified policy between the town and the village. I asked the community development director of the town to work with her staff and others to put together a draft policy. You have that before you. In also in our work with Dan Richardson.
Connected to. I have 3 sons.
Maybe some of you know or don't, but Dan Richardson, who's not only our attorney for merger, is also a council member for Montpelier, and he was instrumental in writing their policy. So we kind of took a lot of what we liked out of all of those policies and thought with Owiso's help, blended it together for what we feel is a good starting point for discussion.
Thanks, Evan. So, and I'll remind the select board that at a recent joint meeting with the trustees, a high school student from Essex High School asked about putting a mural on in the area of Five Corners. So with all of that as background, I'd be interested in hearing from any of you questions or comments on the draft policy, questions for Evan, thoughts that you'd like to share on the topic. Andy, please go ahead.
So looking at the draft document itself, the 5A2 document in the packet, there's at the bottom of the second paragraph, it says position. It mentions state and federal property also. Is that intended, or also how do we? You've scrolled down too far. Right? The last sentence of the paragraph that starts with position says state and federal property. I don't think, do we have jurisdiction over what flags or murals are done on the properties other than town property?
Yeah, we do not.
And also, I know the schools have already decided to raise the Black Lives Matter flag for the duration of the entire school year. Do we need to make it clear that we don't also have jurisdiction over the schools?
I believe this policy is for village and town property, not anybody else's property. So we would not be telling either schools or gas stations or anybody else who has a flagpole that they have to fly something. This would only be on village or town property.
Okay, so then the removal of the clause that covers state and federal and just leaving in the town/village covers that question, I believe. I agree. Okay, thank you.
One other maybe comment at this point, and thank you for bringing this up. In talking with the police chief, he also would like to be, he is very concerned about the police buildings flagpole being included. So maybe not taking it out of this document, but for the select board to know that if there was going to be any decision to put a flag up at the police department, that we at least give him the opportunity to review as well, because there are just some, they don't want to take sides in any case. They just want to stay very neutral. So that's what he asked of me. So I thought I'd relay it. But so I think we can remove state or federal from position in the second paragraph.
Can you clarify where we do have flags? They're at Town Hall and then also in the parade grounds at the fort? Is that?
We have about, and I knew I forgot to bring my list, but we have flagpoles, Village Hall, Town Hall, at Sand Hill. I believe there's one at Sand Hill Pool.
Mhm.
There's one at Maple Street. There is a flag as well at the police department. And I know I am forgetting at least one more. Oh, there is one at the fort as well.
Fire department doesn't have one.
There probably one is at the fire department as well. And I know I'm missing one other.
Okay.
I will
Okay.
get that back, but there's about 6 or 7 of them.
Libraries?
I'd have to, off the top. I don't remember all of them.
Andy, did you have more questions or comments?
So let's see, we're talking also about the mural painting on roadways, and there was a suggestion for 2 specific locations. My question is whether we can define very explicitly the dimensions where that could be used for that, so they don't overflow into areas that aren't intended, or just to bound the box for where a mural can be painted.
When staff does a review of their request and its location, we would define where that could be. I'm assuming after we get, if we do get a couple of these, we will have a general location of where if you want to call it the box of mural can be. The MUTCD, the code basically about road safety, is not as clear as how close you could be, but they say it is not to be in conflict.
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Andy. Pat or Vince or Dawn? Go ahead, Pat. You're muted.
Thank you. I'm really pleased that we're taking a look at this. A few recommendations or something I would suggest. Allowing for periods no greater than 90 days without a return to the select board of trustees for an extension of time. What we found at the school, and the reason why we changed the previous policy to allow for longer periods, was that it felt in many ways that it was putting the onus on individuals who were coming to us with a cause to feel like they needed to re-justify that cause on a regular basis by continuing to come back to us. The example, of course, being Black Lives Matter. It's not like Black lives stop mattering after 90 days. So I might recommend that if there was going to be either a flag raising or a mural in place, that we include just the length of time as part of the approval process, rather than having a 90 days and then further review, just because I think it sets that up much better to have that there either for a specific period of time, for some events, like if it's going to be Pride Month, it's obviously going to be simply 30 days, and that's there within the approval process. But I think that just leaving it kind of open-ended and then asking people to come back for continual review is just not necessary. And as I mentioned, when we were on the school board, it felt like we were just sort of continually reviewing something that didn't necessarily need to be reviewed because the case was made for us in the first place.
So Pat,
Mm-hmm.
so if we just said 90 days, no greater than 90 days.
As long as it's specified, then I think I'm okay with that. I just don't want to set us up to be in a process where we're sort of continually asking people to come back to us looking for, a review with the same justifications and the same arguments, that they made the first time that they wanted to present this, if they feel that it's important enough to keep up or to maintain. So I'm not really sure the best way.
Yeah, so just so that you know, when we discuss this, we don't want to take it that there's only, again, one flag or one group that may want to be on a poll. Again, we have several polls, and we have to, what we want to do, if we're going to, we may be open that there could be multiple competing time slots. And so take that into consideration as well. And then again, there may not be. Only one group may be up and ask for an extension. So, but if you guys discussed it at the school board and you came up with a different way, that's why the select board reviews policies before you approve them.
Right. And I think that did come up as well. And our group is different. We're looking at this from a different angle. Most of the school policy was based off of, the school's vision statements, which, was more, restrictive in what it would then allow, growing hearts and minds, obviously sort of, prevented some organizations from requesting a flag. I'm going to use, I think a good out there example, but one that, could certainly come up is if you remember the old Blues Brothers movie, the Illinois Nazis, got the right to march, as a government entity, we're going to be, looking at potentially different groups coming to us saying, you let these people put up a flag, why not us? So the school policy of attaching it to a vision statement, made sense. In our case, or at least looking at Montpelier's, it looks like the restrictions that they put on it, that were pretty important to have in there, I think, were that it, it included efforts to enhance community identity or community pride, or was of a positive interest. So in that case, I think using Montpelier as the base example for that was a very good one. And it allows for the justification of us to say, this is why we're going to allow one flag, but why we may not allow others, and then review it on a case-by-case basis.
Pat, I appreciate your expressing that, because that was one of my concerns. Aligning a request and making a decision using the basis of our mission statements would not provide us with any valuable metric for saying this doesn't agree with our values, because our mission statements have 0 values in them. Rather, we should be looking at our heart and soul community values. And so perhaps we need to refer back to them. Personally, I think the Town of Essex mission statement might be due for an upgrade. I think we might want to talk about our mission at some point, but I think there isn't anything in that statement that says, other than high quality of life, there's nothing in there about what we feel is a message of positivity for our community that we could use as the basis for judging the appropriateness of a flag request. So that's just, I think maybe heart and soul values, which both boards have agreed to and accepted, might be a better measure of that. Vince or Dawn, do you have any questions or comments?
I'm good.
Okay. Vince? I'm not sure. if we-
Sorry, I was having
Oh.
trouble finding the mute button. Yeah, no, I don't have any comments.
Okay, thanks. I just have a couple other questions, if I may, Evan.
Sure.
I'm curious what the decision was about identifying only 2 locations in the town for suitable places to put murals, on street murals.
Sure. Part of the issues are that we, in the 5 corners, they're all state routes, and there's a lot of signage and road signage that is potentially in conflict. So same thing in a lot of our high traffic areas. So the other thing is, it's not that we're going to maintain the murals, but we do want to keep an eye on that they don't get vandalized. And that's where Public Works felt they would best be placed.
Okay, in comparing what we have proposed here and what Montpelier has, they have a much different method of determining where to locate them. So
Yeah. This is where staff felt they could be. If other locations are asked for, we can look at them, but these are where Dennis felt they would best be placed.
Well, if we only say that you can put a mural in 2 places throughout the entire 35 miles of the town, then people are going to not ask for other locations if we say that those are the only 2 places you can have it.
So.
I'm open to thoughts from other board members. I just feel like that's quite a limitation. Another question I have is, this policy is written primarily, it feels like it's primarily from the standpoint of groups wanting to make a political statement. The mural aspect of it, I really liked how Montpelier addressed the fact that this just could be art. And there may be people who want to do art in the town. And I just think that some of the aspects, like Section A guidelines in Montpelier, talk about guidelines for art and just addresses the fact that this is an opportunity for public art. So I don't know if we want to take one more look at the Montpelier policy and see how we can accommodate in our policy. I know brevity is better. I just want to make sure that this is not simply a policy that is just for political speech, because it's not.
Okay.
Pat.
Yeah, I would echo what you just mentioned, Elaine. The Montpelier guidelines in particular, I think would be relatively important for us to include, if not wholesale, then I think in part in this document, because it would cover the art and it would cover, the basis for what we decide to either affirm or to turn down requests for particulars of flags or murals. And since they were pretty specific about, with their 9 points, about that, I think having that in this document, thank you. I think having that within this document, rather than just referring to the values of heart and soul, would be important, because again, like you said, the town and the village mission statements, but they're pretty bland when it comes to what exactly it is that we're trying to accomplish. I don't think that it really impacts someone coming to us looking to raise a flag for any particular statement. So including what Montpelier did as part of the guidelines, I think should go in this document.
Thanks, Pat. So Evan, my understanding is the trustees are also looking at this tonight in their meeting?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So we're kind of conferencing, so whatever you guys say and whatever they say, we will kind of blend it in and bring it back.
Okay. I know this is not something we're going to vote on today, but perhaps we should do a public input process just to, or timing on this agenda item. So before we move on to the next one, would the board be amenable to that?
I
Yep,
think that's a good
absolutely.
idea.
Okay. So members of the public in the audience, if you're interested in having any comments or questions about this particular agenda item, would you mind letting us know by raising your hand or putting a comment in the chat? Let it go for a few more seconds. Okay, not seeing anybody, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next business item, which is 5B, discussion and potential action on creation and hire of town's village assistant manager. Take it away, Evan.
Several weeks back, both the select board and the village board asked me if merger, what was the cost of the delay of merger? In talking with my staff, Greg, Sarah, Travis, Tammy, and now Linda, one of the main items is just the workload. And as you all know, and my pal Sarah, who's in on this meeting, Sarah is the finance director and also assigned as the assistant village manager. Those duties, I'll start with the finance director. So she is responsible for putting together 2 budgets, 2 audits. She deals with 2 sets of water and sewer bills, 2 property tax collections that are done through the clerk's office, and many other duplicated, and 2 audits. Did I say audit? And as well as she supervises, I believe, 5 departments, as well as her own. And so that, coupled with all the night meetings that we have per month, we felt that to be able, that's her side. Then you have Greg, who's on the town side as well. He has 5 or 6 reports plus special projects, and board meetings, both village and town, and projects, etc. So we felt that delaying merger and just that part, but also I think people think that once a vote is taken, we're merged. That's actually not true. Once the vote is taken, it goes to the state. The state could take upwards of 2 years, a year and a half, I believe, 2 sessions to take up the topic. So, and then once it is approved, if it is approved, then you have the business of the transition period as well, and trying to get all the items in the transition period done. So we felt that this would help in the workload. Is that what you're looking for, Madam Chair?
Yes, I believe that was a good, am I muted?
No, you're good.
That was a good summary. Board members, what are your thoughts? Pat.
Yeah, thank you, Evan, for putting this together. I'm 100% behind it. We've asked several times for, with the awareness that staff is certainly overtaxed with the workload and number of meetings and COVID and everything that you guys have to deal with now. So, I'm 100% behind the additional employee.
Thank you.
Andy, Vince, or Dawn? Andy?
Uh, So Evan, I understand that, the merge. Oh, I'm getting an echo. Is it just me?
No, I got
Okay,
the echo too.
Seems to be gone now, though. I recognize that, right, the vote for merger is only the start of the process, and that you need to go through all of the combining of departments and all of that. So there's the workload continues for a number of years after the merger vote happens, and so given that this is being billed as a cost of not merging, once we get to the point of everything being consolidated, is the intent to remove this position, or is the expectation that with the larger community we'll continue to need this position?
I think what I would do is, there's always opportunities for reorganization. I don't want to say that anybody in administration is leaving, but they might someday in the future. And so one of the things I would look at is, after we get through significant projects that need to really be done, we would be looking at the workload. We would be looking at our community and what's going on. And then if there's a vacancy, I would probably look at that time to say, this might be a good time to move some workload around. And you never know, but I don't know if this position would be something that we'd say, definitely, any period in the future, you could look up and see this position here, but there certainly is the current workload. And if there was an opportunity in the future to rebalance, I would certainly give that a good look.
Okay, the other question is the very last word showing on the screen that I see right now, and now it's moved, is surplus. And we have not yet seen the FY20 fund balance numbers, and you cautioned us against being too crazy with spending until we understand how our tax collection
Sure.
is going as well. I usually try to be pretty cautious with what we do with our surplus money and our fund balance, and like to do a thorough review of it. And we haven't seen that yet here. So
Absolutely. Well, first the questions, and Andy, I support where you're at, right? I understand, and I have said those things in the future. First, the question of is the position necessary, and does the select board have any comments or questions about it? And that's the first. Second one is funding. Because we do not currently have this position fully budgeted, the only two opportunities was the vacant position, which was the project manager position, which is currently vacant, and use of surplus funds. I do not have where we are currently myself, but I know Sarah has her crystal ball and may, take a gaze into it. It also depends on if the select board and or the village board of a mind to do this position, the question of timing could be brought into play. So if the position is necessary and approved, we could also work on the timing of filling it, which may or may not require the use of surplus funds. If it's pushed back a couple of months, the vacant position would cover at least a couple of months of this position, if that makes sense.
yeah, we generally don't add headcount except through the budget process.
Yeah.
And so this is a little
Yeah.
unusual for us, and so that's
And I'm going to also be clear, if I thought the funding would have been available for this position, I probably
You would have proposed it for this current year.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And so,
if you, right.
what with COVID and the job market, as you know, the unemployment rate, I think about 2.5 months ago, it was at 12. We are now under 10 and going in the correct direction. But the town also held its tax to a 0 rate increase. And so we are trying to be mindful of that. But as you all know, merger's not a done deal. And there's 2 votes that have to occur. The village is going to go in November and the town potentially in March. And there's no guarantee both will be positive in terms of merger. So maybe this is something that's in the background. I don't know.
Vince or Dawn, any thoughts about this position?
Nothing major, just that if it's a necessary position and it gets in a better place staffing wise, I support it.
Thanks, Vince. Dawn, you want to give it a shot if you have any comments? So Evan, I guess my only comment would be perhaps the wisdom of delaying until the vacant project manager position can cover it. Might be a good idea. Oh, I see Dawn. Go ahead, Dawn.
Sorry about that. I switched to my own laptop.
Awesome.
I think I have the same concern that you do, Elaine, about waiting for the empty position on the project manager.
Yeah, I absolutely want this position to happen because the most important thing it does is it alleviates a massive workload and provides some additional support that is desperately needed. I want to be mindful of Andy's comment that we normally don't add positions mid-budget year, but at the same time, I want to honor this as soon as we possibly can. So Evan, can you remind me, what is the timing? If we just went with the project management position is $50,000. So where does that put us on the calendar?
Oh, that, ouch. You know what? Sarah, are you listening?
Of course I'm listening.
I know you are.
I think it puts us approximately February. And if we, I think that this will definitely also come up in the budget season, which is at our doorstep, folks.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was thinking February, March. So it probably puts us right in that time frame. And of course, by then we will probably have some budgetary numbers of how we're looking for going into the 4th quarter of the fiscal year. But just so that all you know, so one of the reasons we have a range is the range actually is dependent upon what type of health insurance you take, whether it's single plus one, or family. And as probably anybody who has, health insurance, those ranges vary. Family coverage is very expensive for us. And we're not able to discriminate against people if they have a family or otherwise. So that's why we have that range, and we won't know what that person's true cost will be until they accept the position and apply for health insurance through us. So that's why I'm just saying there's that little bounce between, say, February and March.
Thanks, Evan. Pat? Pat, you had your hand up, but now it's not up. Did you want to speak?
Yeah, I put my hand down thinking it was the mute button. So, I mean, I really feel like February, March is a long time to go before filling this position. And I also, certainly not to call ourselves out, but I feel like it's a little disingenuous of us to having said the last several meetings that we want to do what we can for staff and that we're asking them to come to us with what they need. And I think we were pretty explicit about that. They're coming to us telling us what they need now. This isn't what they need 6 months from now. This is all of the meetings, all of the joint meetings, all of the merger meetings that are going to happen between now and February/March, when we may look to hold our vote. I don't agree with waiting that long. I really feel strongly that since we were pretty explicit about asking them to let us know what they needed, this is exactly what we asked for. It would be, I feel like it would be a mistake to turn this request down.
Thanks for reminding us of that commitment we made, Pat. I appreciate it. Further thoughts, board members? Andy?
But we also have to be able to pay for it. That's the, without, seeing what that surplus looks like. I know we've anecdotally been told it's going to be something, but the other side of the coin is we don't know what our tax collections are going to look like. Everything's due in a week, right? I don't know if there's any sense for how it's gone so far. Are we, I don't know if that's, if there's any measure there or not, but
Sure. I'd be happy to ask if you want. Sarah does, I believe, have a preliminary number.
Yeah, I can tell you that as of today, we're over 56% collected on the first installment. And as of today, a year ago, we were only 53% collected. So there's no real difference. I would say we're in the same place that we were last year as far as tax collections go, which is, I breathe a little sigh of relief every day because it was such an unknown.
Right. That is a surprise.
And I don't want to argue against, our own self-interest here, but again, we have COVID. We have a shaky, at best, labor market. We have many issues that we're dealing with, including now, because of COVID, we have a lot more grant writing and grant administration to do because our state, which has been very good to us, and our federal government keeps throwing curveballs at us and just crazy time frames. First, they tell us, oh, don't worry, we don't need this stuff till the end of the year. And then it's like, oh, September, whatever, 4th would be great. That's not the end of the year. So we have that. I think that we also have some sensitivity to our labor unions, where they too sacrificed. Both of them came to agreements with us and took a little less than they were getting before during this period. So we want to be very cognizant of what they did as well. So I'm trying to straddle this two worlds of our need and what we've already agreed to with others and work that out. So I guess one of the suggestions I would make is taking comments tonight, bringing this back before the joint board meeting, which is in a couple weeks, figuring out a decent timeline to get this fixed, and maybe finding something maybe where we can advertise the position, go through a recruitment, and look to start this maybe early in the year, maybe January, February, and get busy on the work of the community, because there's a lot a lot on our plates yet to do. That's what I would suggest.
Thanks, Evan. Can I just point out a numbers thing? In the memo to us, you say the salary range is up to 110,000, but on the job description, it lists up to 105,000.
Oh, okay.
So, and if the project manager vacancy is 50,000 and the total cost, should they choose a family plan on insurance, would be 130, we're looking at $80,000 from surplus, basically, if we were to do this right away. Is that correct?
Almost, because it's already September, so that's a full year. So if we were to do this right away, and I think it would be a little bit less than that.
Okay. And our surplus, if I recall correctly, is 2.5 million at the moment, somewhere around there.
Are you referring to the unassigned fund balance from the FY19 audit?
Yes, I am.
Okay, that is yes, that's a good approximate number.
Okay.
But yes, that does not reflect changes that happened in FY20.
Sure. Okay.
Which all indications so far point towards surplus.
Okay. I just want to give some context there in terms of if we did approve this full position today, that we're looking at a relatively small percentage of that unassigned fund balance. Go ahead, Andy.
I would disagree that this is an emergency that would cause us to tip into that 15% fund balance. I think this needs to come from new fund balance or unassigned fund, other fund balance that's not already part of our emergency funding. I would think that if we're in an emergency situation, we would be reducing meeting agendas and rather than adding headcount. I mean, like for example, we didn't need to tonight talk about the, flag raising policy. That's just an example, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have done it. I'm just, and I don't want to start a fight by saying that. I'm just saying as an example that if this is an emergency, we should be thinking about what we should be doing, not trying to do everything that is asked for and adding headcount as a result. I don't see taking it out of our 15% fund balance is inappropriate, is my point.
I would agree with that, Andy, and that's not what I was asking Sarah. I believe I was asking about the balance of the unassigned fund balance. Is that correct, Sarah?
Yes, but that is the 15% that Andy's referring to. So our fund balance policy says that we will have no more than 15% in unassigned fund balance.
Got it. Okay.
And I can maybe, clear the logjam, maybe by the next meeting. I mean, it's kind of hard because the fiscal year starts July 1 and we're at basically September 1. So we only have July, August to deal with. Depending upon where this is going, it's hard to say where we will end up in eight or 9 more months. That's why I'm more inclined, depending on how you all feel, that we have the one position that's vacant. If we get approval, we can look to see what that would likely cover in terms of time, in terms of months it left in the fiscal year.
I think your suggestion to put our comments with those of the village board together and then come back to us in October is a good one, Evan.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
In October or at our next
I was
joint meeting is.
I was
the 10th of-
thinking at the next joint
Yeah.
meeting, which
Yes,
is
the 20th.
September, but that agenda's packed.
We have quite a big agenda for that
yeah.
meeting.
But my next question is, do you have any comments about the job description?
I do not. Board members?
No.
Nope, I don't have anything.
Okay. Sounds
So-
like it's good to go, Evan.
Andy, is your hand up?
No, it's not.
Okay, so then for the joint meeting, depending upon what is happening on the other side of town, in the village meeting, I will bring this back on the agenda, time permitting. If it gets bumped to October, it gets bumped to October. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you, and I appreciate your support. And we will figure out a way to get all of the work done that's necessary, hopefully knowing that the position is out there in the future.
Well, and Evan, thank you very much. And we definitely want to help you with the workload. We want to help you accomplish the things that we are asking you to do. So we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Before we move on to the next order of business, I'd like to open it up to the public for comment, if that's all right with the board. Okay, I see some nodding.
Yep.
So members of the public, if you are interested in having a comment on this business item, please raise your hand.
The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is an important part of that. I think the fact that it's been around for 11 years now suggests that at this point, the changes that are going to be made are changes that are more incremental in nature. Now, as much as I would like to agree with Zeke, I simply cannot on this.
What's going on?
Elaine, I think you're muted.
Elaine, you're muted.
Someone is listening to the trustees meeting at the same time they're listening to us. That's a trustees meeting.
Okay, so, good one, Dawn. So if you are not speaking, please turn off your mic. We really need you to do that. And Betsy, if you'd like to speak, give it a shot.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I would be interested in making sure we leave some, I don't know how much money is required, that 15% in the fund balance, because as a member of the BCA, we're coming up on a time when people are not able to pay taxes possibly, or penalties or their fees. And I would like to know that we have money there so that we can abate people that require that without feeling that we are going to be shorting our monies for our budget and causing us problems with the state. That's all I'd like to say about this. Thank you.
Thanks, Betsy. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Okay, we're going to move on to the next business item. 5C, nominate representative to attend Vermont League of Cities and Towns Annual Town Fair. Dawn. You're muted.
I nominate Andy Watt because he's going anyway.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Andy,
Before
do
we
you
vote-
actually want to go?
Right, let's have some discussion.
So I'm planning on attending a number of the sessions. I've gone to this, I don't know, every year for 6 or 7 years. The format of, well, the question I guess I need to be clarity on is what I'm being nominated for. I've only previously attended the Vermont League of Cities and Towns annual meeting, but in parallel, there's also the verb and passive meetings, which I have not ever attended before, and I have not represented the town at those meetings. Those are have to do with the I don't know, Evan knows more about what verb and passive are than I do. I think it's the insurance and the, I don't know what those are.
So verb and passive are two separate boards, and to my knowledge, we haven't nominated people from the board to go because Pat Scheidel has been involved in both of those and he took care of that. So I don't know that we ever appointed him to be our representative, but we generally just did the town fair.
Right. So I just want to be clear that I'm only being nominated to go to the VLCT annual town meeting, not the other two meetings. Because I don't want to.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Because I don't, you know, as I said, I don't even know and didn't even really know what those acronyms stand for. I don't want to be the voting rep for those two other meetings, which generally they actually happen kind of one after the other is the way that the new format is. They used to be separate meetings, but now they're all combined into a single gathering, or one follows the other. And I'm not sure even, it may be that I don't know if they are in session simultaneously or not. But anyway, my intent would only be for the VLCT meeting. I don't know if we need to cover the other two. My other comment about this is really only a yes or no vote to the municipal policy. All of the interesting stuff happens a week before on the 23rd in a meeting where all the amendments to the policy are proposed and voted on. And I'm not available to attend that meeting. That's actually the more interesting meeting to attend and cover. So I don't know if Elaine, you're going to intend to be at that meeting or not.
I will be there as a member of the board of VLCT and as one of the people who helped draft the legislative policy for the upcoming session. So it would be great if there was somebody else from the town who could do that. I see Dawn, your hand's back down. Are you good?
Well, it was my intention to nominate him as the VLCT rep, so.
So we're clarifying your motion is just for VLCT.
That's correct.
Pat, your hand is up.
Yeah, my question actually sort of segues nicely with Andy's. You know, I'm not terribly familiar with this, but the policy meeting that happens the week before, what exactly is that like? I mean, when we get that, the school board, or the annual school meeting happens like the day of, and all of the nominations are contributed by the various school boards, but then that goes out to all of them. And then as a group, we typically decided, you know, what we were going to support and what we were not going to support. That way our representative to the official annual meeting could vote yes or no based off of the entirety of the board. Since it seems like this annual meeting where those policies are being proposed is just 1 week beforehand, would we have any time to discuss those as a group? Or it seems like the voting member on the 30th would basically just have to go off of their gut. So I'm not really sure, you know, how that breaks down. I'm positive Andy represents our values very well and could do that. But I just wanted to know if there was any chance for us to weigh in before that would happen. And I am available the 23rd, so if it's needed, I could make that.
Okay.
So if you want to, go ahead, Elaine, you're on the board. You know better than, yeah, go ahead.
So the 23rd is when the VLCT board will present to the membership the official municipal policy statements for the 2021-2022 legislative session. It's a long document with multiple topics: transportation, energy, municipal financing, property taxes. It's a municipal position on all these things, and we give it to the legislature to say, this is what we want you to do in the event you actually listen to us. So it's on the VLCT website, And I was just going to look and see if I could find the link and put it in the chat so that you can see it ahead of time. You'll get it ahead of time. And you can look at it and think about it. And then it can be amended at the 23rd meeting. But then at the town fair, that's an up or down vote. There's no amendments at the town fair. So our board, I don't believe we're meeting between the 23rd and the 1st. So we personally won't have the ability to discuss it. However, I can say that well, I was on the transportation committee to do the transportation stuff, and I definitely weighed in with thoughts about what we're thinking about municipal roads and transportation and funding for those things. So I didn't have input personally into the other committees because I wasn't on those committees, but the consensus of the board, which is representative of the whole state, was that those policy positions are of a consensus of the municipalities of the state. So I'll have to,
So we do have a meeting on the 28th. It's a joint meeting, but you've already said it's a full agenda. But
yeah, but we could put the we could probably put the policy statement in the packet as a reading file, if that would be helpful.
If it's available, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, that would.
Okay. So does that mean? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I've been complaining to the VLCT for years that they don't make the policy available soon enough for it to actually be reviewed in a public meeting by the select board. But in this case, we've added an additional meeting at the end of the month that might make that possible for it to be, be seen and at least part of a public meeting. So maybe we have that there. And Patrick, on the 23rd, the way they've done it in the past is they actually go through section by section and they ask if anybody has any. They approve all of the so-called non-controversial sections and then go back and vote separately on each of the individual sections. Anybody who wants to make an amendment on individual sections, it can take several hours, and I always enjoyed the hell out of it. I really liked that meeting, but they took it away. So.
Yeah,
we had to make a lot of changes because of COVID. So.
And there'll be a lot of discussion about cannabis and so forth. That's going to be, I'm sure, a big topic in there. In one of the sections. So there's a lot of stuff of interest that should be attended by somebody.
Yeah. Well, Pat, I'd be happy to get you the information about attending the policy meeting. Andy, are you still interested in being our delegate if it's just an up and down vote on the 1st?
If we need to have a delegate and you don't want to do it, then yeah, I'll do it, sure.
I would prefer to share the wealth.
All right, I'll do it.
Okay. We have a motion.
Assuming I'm voted in, right?
Yeah, right. We have a motion and a second on the table for Andy to be our representative to the VLCT town meeting, annual meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, Andy, thank you as always for representing us so well at that meeting.
And there is a piece of paperwork that needs to be submitted to give me that designation. So,
Evan, can you make sure that that's taken care of, or Greg? I'll follow up and make sure that we get that paperwork taken care of.
I just put it on my notes for tonight, and we will make sure it happens.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, and just a quick sidebar to say, the agenda for Town Fair is available. I highly recommend all of you take the opportunity to attend as many sessions as you can. It's a little less time consuming because it's online. You can drop in for one session and then go back to work or whatever, but there's a select board roundtable. There is a conversation about communication during crisis. There is a conversation about policing. There's a lot of really, really useful stuff. I always get something good out of the town fair. So I highly recommend that you go or you attend via online, and don't forget to register as well. It's free this year because of COVID. So please avail yourself of this really great resource. Okay, next business item 5D, discussion and potential action on draft merger charter. So we had an item in our packet with questions that we had compiled out of the charter draft that the trustees had sent over to us. and they were sent to Dan Richardson, a long list of questions, and he has provided his responses, which I'm not sure if board members, you've had a chance to read those responses. But what I'd like to suggest is that I would be happy to update the the draft charter version that we have right now to incorporate Dan's comments and suggestions, and then provide that version back to all of you for one more review, with the hope that we can finish our internal discussion before the end of September, so that we can then start talking to the trustees once again. That's what I'd propose. I would love to hear your thoughts. I see Dawn doing this. Andy.
So I didn't have any internet access over the weekend, so I didn't get a chance to do a deep review of the what's in the packet here. But I did have a question about the redistricting language. When we were working on the letter to send to GovOps, Bill Ellis was on the call, and he recommended that we remove the comment about having the redistricting approved by the public, since you could get into a situation where the redistricting gets voted down, and then he recommended that the select board approve the redistricting. Dan Richardson suggests the opposite, that we need to. Well, he's suggesting that we do it. He's not saying that it's required. So I'm finding that it seems to be some conflicting legal advice, and just need to understand which direction we should go in on that. Also, unless I misunderstood what Dan Richardson said, I thought he suggested that we completely remove the redistricting section, because the select board can always convene a redistricting committee anytime they want without having the explicitly stated in the charter. But the letter that we got from the GovOps explicitly expressed concern that there was no definition for the redistricting process. So again, we have conflicting comments there, and just those are the.
Andy, I see what you're saying, and I'm inclined to err towards the side of what House Government Ops is asking of us. And I understand what Bill is saying to be more, I mean, I don't mean to pit one lawyer against the other, but I think Bill's advice is more constructive for us, because we would be presented with a big problem if the public voted that down. And Montpelier's, I believe it was Montpelier's, is Dan recommending Montpelier's language, or is Bill? One of them, because House Government Ops had given us examples of multiple towns that had a solution for this in their charters, and they recommended we look at those, and that's what we did, and that's what we put in our letter to them. So I'm inclined to stick with what Bill is suggesting.
Okay. Okay, so you're suggesting that you're gonna incorporate what you recognize as our current version, and it will come back, so that will be reflected in that version.
Yes, it will.
Okay. All right, and again, I apologize. I was in a place that had no internet over the weekend, so I was not able to do a detailed look at this topic.
That's okay. We still have a little time, and you're allowed to have a vacation. Pat, your hand is up.
Sounds like a wonderful place.
Yeah, I had two concerns. Andy actually mentioned one of them, so I can pass on that one. The other one was number 3, about the which ordinance, town or village. Dan Richardson has some specific language that he suggests in there, but in it, he actually, I think, suggests multiple options. Most restrictive ordinance applies, or Dan can add language specifying that ordinance applying to a specific area will continue to do so. Just wanted to lend my recommendation to the second, so that we're not putting the village firearm ordinance across the whole of the Essex municipality. Just I think that was the only other concern that I had through these.
Yeah, Pat, thank you for bringing that up. I know that there have been residents very concerned about any changes to the firearms discharge ordinance that the town has, and understanding that the village is included in the town's ordinance as a no shooting zone. And then if we stick with the town's version of that ordinance, that covers everything without changing any of the aspects of our ordinance, and also honors the villages as well. So we could even be that specific if we wanted to. Andy?
I don't think that's completely correct, because you can't use a bow and arrow or an air gun in the village, whereas there's nothing prohibiting archery or use of bow and arrow in anywhere in the town. So there would be some loosening. If you went to just the town shooting ordinance, there would be a loosening in the village.
Yeah,
Understood.
But it does seem like we can use the.
Yeah. You can, right. It could be written such that it's done correctly, but we need to be careful.
Of course. So if that course of action is acceptable to everybody, I'm happy to turn around a revised edition to you in a couple days for further consideration. Board members? Okay.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you. Yes, that'd be good.
You're very welcome. I'm really pleased that we're moving along so smoothly and progressing towards the opportunity to have public input in November. So thank you as well for doing your homework and keeping it moving. This is probably something we should have a little public input on before we move along. Is that all right with the board?
Yep.
Okay. Audience, if you are interested in raising your hand or making a comment, please let us know. Irene, go ahead.
Thank you. As I look through the charter, I'm concerned that we have a number of transition periods, and I wondered if we could give them names or something, maybe call the one in section 102 the governance transition period, because that lasts just for 1 year. But then there's a 12-year tax district transition period. There's a 5-year voting district period. So I think those could be confusing to the casual reader, and I just wondered if there are different names that could be given to them. Thank you.
That's a good suggestion. Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to make a comment? Okay, then let's move on.
I'm not sure if you,
please.
You might have people pinned on your screen, but I see Patty.
Oh, Patty,
waving
sorry,
at
go
us.
ahead. I can't see you. Go ahead,
Oh.
Patty.
Sorry, you can't see me?
No,
Can you hear
because
me?
there's a document on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
When you guys are talking about the whole firearm ordinance, 8.1, we want, if you're not going to change the ordinance, we at least want some signs where Saxon Hill is very heavily used and our lives matter. Over here in 8.1, we have a population greater than that of Waterbury, and I was willing to offer to pay for those signs. So if, I understand, the trustees don't want 3 and 3, but I want us to have some kind of protection. Either the police come and do some rounds, we get some signs out there that there are pedestrians. And if you're going to allow bow and arrows and air guns and what have you, that is not safe for us. And I take offense to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Anybody else? Okay, thank you all. Moving on, item 5D, excuse me, 5E, schedule meeting to discuss planning governance in merger charter. So we had talked about inviting the planning commissions and the zoning board to talk with us and the trustees. And we were hoping to do this in September. The joint meeting is scheduled for the 28th. That is also the day that we are going to hear from Sarah Macy about taxation figures for merger and separation. So that's going to be a hefty topic for that day. I'd like us to be able to give the planning commissions and the ZBA the courtesy of a decent amount of time to talk with them and to learn from them. So Evan, we had talked briefly offline about possible scheduling opportunities. Have you and Greg and Sarah come up with anything that we should know about?
No, I don't, but I'm gonna double check with Greg.
So the only thing we do have on that September 28th agenda is that presentation from Sarah. Is that correct?
I don't think so. I will have to look at the work list.
Right, yeah. Because we had talked about having the planning commissions and ZBA join us on the 28th, which would be great if we could do it in September, but I am concerned that I'm not remembering something important that's supposed to be on that September 28th agenda. But the upshot is, if we are able to fit it on the agenda, Select Board, are you okay with doing that on September 28th? If not, would you be okay with calling a special meeting in early October to bring together the commissions and the boards? Dawn, I see nodding. Pat, your hand is up. You're muted.
We do also have scheduled that day from 4 to 6 our racial equity training.
That's right.
So for those of us who plan on attending that, bear in mind it's probably going to be a pretty long day. If we go from 4 to 6, have a half-hour break, and then come back at 6:30 for a joint meeting. So it might be advisable for us to pick a specific date that's not the 28th. I mean, I recognize our need to get this done quickly, but I'm just not sure if that day is going to be the best one for us to, you know, if at that point be sitting in Zoom meetings from 4 to 10 or 11 at night.
Right. Well, in the interest of not spending 40 minutes trying to schedule something during a public meeting, my suggestion would be that we ask staff to consult the work list to see what's in the batter's box for the 28th. And if the 28th is not going to work, then let's do a poll for as early in October as we possibly can, if you're amenable to a special meeting. Sound good?
I am.
Okay. Meanwhile, in preparation for that, let's think about planning. Take a look at the merger draft charter to see the sections about planning that are relevant, and think about your questions ahead of time so that we can be efficient with the use of our time and our guest time at that meeting. I have a hand up from the public, so if it's okay with the board, shall we go to public comment for a moment on this topic? Okay, Betsy, go ahead, and then if there's anyone else that wants to comment on this topic, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Betsy.
Hi, given that you're talking about planning, I'm wondering, given the fact that the legislature looks like it's poised to pass tax and regulate marijuana, have you put that on your agenda?
Yes, Betsy, thank you. That is definitely something we're going to need to talk about in that context. Anybody else? Okay. So the next item on our agenda is a discussion of real estate, which needs to be an executive session. So we're going to hold off on that until the end of the meeting. And we've moved on to the consent agenda. Would anyone like to move the consent agenda so we can discuss it?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vince. Okay, are there any items in the consent agenda anyone wishes to discuss briefly? We did not pull any out to discuss at length. Doesn't look so. Okay, so we have a motion. Oh,
Sorry, yeah, I do have one. The Champlain Housing Trust proposal. That seemed like a pretty substantial.
That's in the reading file. Not the
Oh,
consent.
yeah, you're right. Sorry, I withdraw.
no problem, Pat. Dawn?
Make the motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
We do have a motion and a second on the table for it already.
Oh, sorry.
If there's no further discussion, we can go ahead and vote on it. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Now we're on the reading file. Go ahead, Pat.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the Champlain Housing Trust proposal. Are we going to see more on this coming up? I'm not sure. I read through it, but I didn't really get a clear idea of where in the process they were with this. And I do think it's something that's going to be pretty relevant to us. I was pleased to see that they had already talked to the school district about, possible needs for children going there. But I also think that that's been an area of concern for the police department. So I want to make sure that everyone within our departments are going to have a chance to sort of appropriately weigh in on this proposal.
Oh, go ahead, Evan.
I'm under the impression that the property is properly zoned for what they're proposing to do. So this is not something that's necessarily in the purview of the select board. It goes to, there is one zoning amendment that goes through the ZBA. So we have posted some thoughts and some concerns, but it is not something that's approved by the select board.
Okay.
But again, that doesn't mean you can't ask CHT to come to the select board, give an overview, and let them know your concerns. I'm just saying it's not something you can either approve or reject.
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm just confusing that because I know that with the housing that was in the fort, that was a process, and I know we were involved with that in a different way because of the
they were
pass-through.
asking. Yeah, they were asking us to be a supporter of their bond, and that's where we were involved. But if you do want us to ask the CHT to come on in, we can certainly make that request of them. They have always seemed to be very amenable to come in. I would also note that one of our goals for a community is to address affordable housing. This does that. And I think CHT should also explain, if you do bring them in, all the ways that they provide supportive help for the families that live in their units.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of work, and honestly, if it's not within our purview to say yes or no to this, then I don't necessarily see that we need to bring them in, but I think it might be great for the new housing committee to have CHT come in, and maybe they would have or want some input
Sure.
into that process. I mean, that's just me personally thinking about it.
Andy, you had your hand up, but now it's down.
Yeah, I'm still debating whether to ask the question or not, but I think I will. And I did send it in an email. The question about it's the same topic about the CHT thing is if the property changes I don't know if the property is changing ownership or just use, and whether there's any change to its the property taxes. Just for interest's sake, it's not necessarily. I completely understand that it's not something that we would approve or disapprove. Just looking for clarity as to what the property tax situation would be on that property.
I believe the property owners can apply for a abatement of the municipal tax up to 10%. That's about the only tax break they would get, and they have to apply for it.
So it's not making the whole property a nonprofit.
Correct.
Okay. That's thank you.
I'd like to thank Oiso and Sharon for providing this memo. I had asked for something like this because I had not heard anything about this change. And while I realize that this is an administrative review from the staffing perspective, which is fine, and not looking for any approvals at the select board level. However, converting a large hotel over to permanent affordable housing is a significant change of use. And it takes a hotel out of commission. And so I'm curious about what's Essex going to do economic development wise when all we have left for a hotel in the community is a 4-star hotel. So, I'm just a little concerned about that, but thrilled that we're going to get this level of pretty quick affordable housing brought into the community. And I'd also like to hear from Chief Hogue his anticipated concerns, or his concerns anticipating the change of use. We understand there's been quite a few calls to that hotel right now because it's also a site of emergency homeless housing for due to COVID-19. And we just need to understand what the impact on emergency services is going to be with such a change of use. So, but thank you to Sharon and Oiso for putting that together. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you to Travis and to Greg and to you, Evan, for all the updates on the racial equity work and the training that we're doing in the town. Looking forward to seeing the results of the survey and moving forward on the equity training that we're going to be going under. So thank you so much for taking that initiative and running with it. Pat.
So I have something that's unrelated to anything specific to the reading file, but I was wondering if it might be appropriate to bring up, since we are talking about transfers of property and we're going to be talking about real estate in executive session. I'm wondering, do we as a town keep track of, in any way, properties that are being used for short-term or temporary rentals, like via Airbnb? The reason why I'm actually asking this is that I think over the past, I would say maybe 2 months or so, I've had several individuals that I know who are looking to buy property or buy a house explicitly in Essex. And each time that they've done so, they've been outbid almost immediately. One person was, one of them was not only outbid on their asking price, but the individual waived inspection. Another person purchased it from out of state, sight unseen, to make sure that they could, complete that. So I know there's a lot of property being purchased, and the anecdotes that I've been hearing are that some of these properties being purchased are for the purpose of converting them over to Airbnb, because Vermont is a destination right now for people sort of, across the Northeast to kind of get away. Our COVID numbers are so great that we're just a popular, I think, vacation destination. But I don't know if Essex has any way of keeping track, or if we have been keeping track of those sort of short-term rental options. And if we're not, I think it might be a good idea for us to start doing that, just so that we have some idea of the properties that we have here and what they're being used for. in our community. So I know it's not appropriate for this session or this meeting, but maybe something for a future agenda topic.
I wouldn't mind taking a crack at that real quick, Pat. So regarding the Airbnb part, so part of the work that I do in my daytime job is we've done a study of short-term rentals in Vermont, and it's very, very difficult to identify the individual sites. And the best way to do it is to go to Airbnb and look up all the sites that are in Essex, and at VRBO, look up all the sites that are in Essex. It's very difficult to pin down, and we can't pin it down through the tax department because Vermont has a contract with all of these kinds of websites that they report their sales tax payments in bulk for the full state. They don't break them down. So we have no way of knowing what properties they're paying taxes on. So it's a mystery, unfortunately, and it's at our expense. And then the other aspect is that real estate is like 300% up right now in Vermont because of COVID, and people are buying stuff sight unseen all over the state. So the anecdotes you're hearing aren't wrong.
Right.
So. Any other questions or comments for board member for the reading file? All right, so at this time, we need to move into executive session. When we return, we don't have any further business to conduct. We'll just adjourn at that point. Andy?
So I can make the motion, but before I do, we don't have an executive session meeting on our calendar to move to.
Oh, you mean electronically?
We don't have a link to click on to get to a meeting, just to be aware. So there may be some delay in getting that started, right? I think.
Right.
I think I can try to start a new one and call all of you.
Yeah.
And if in 5 minutes it doesn't work, we'll reconvene here.
Okay.
But Sarah, I'm on my home computer, so.
But are you on the Teams app?
I think so.
Dawn, I will call you first, okay?
Okay, yep.
Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. We'll see how it goes. Dawn, I'm going to chat you, and we'll start.
Andy, why don't you do the formalities?
Yeah, I move that the select board enter into executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options in accordance with 1 VSA section 313A2 and to include the unified manager.
And assistant manager.
And assistant manager.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Okay. There's a second one, right, Andy?
What's that?
Isn't there a second motion?
Nope.
Or did we not do the finding?
There's only one motion in the memo.
Then we're good to go. So we're going to go into executive session at 8:07.
Okay. Good night, everybody who's in the audience. I'll see you all in the executive session.
Thank you,
Thanks.
audience.
Not
you,
coming back
everybody.
for any action.
And I'll look for an email with your motions and actions, all of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye.